is up? It is Dave. It is Duncan. Back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Scottish post-metal band Codespeaker. The band's new album, Scavenger, will be released on November 8th via Ripcord Records. So, Edinburgh post-metalers Codespeaker released their self-titled debut back in October 2022. The album was hailed as a richly textured tapestry of modern post-metal mastery by Distorted Sound magazine. Their arrival on the UK scene was solidified with a tour in 2023, along with supporting acts such as Pound, Sylvain, and 100-Year-Old Man. Now with their second album, Scavenger, Codespeaker delves even deeper into the human experience through their atmospheric, dark, and heavy post-metal sound. Featuring thunderous drums and colossal guitars reminiscent of titanic bands like Neurosis and Cult of Luna, Scavenger marks a new chapter for Codespeaker. This massive sounding record offers a towering and immersive experience, ebbing and flowing between hypnotic, mammoth-sized riffs and intense vocals, whilst also embracing atmospheric and contemplative moments. Scavenger was an interesting album for us to write, with 3 out of 5 members joining since the last album, in order to craft something that reflected the new incarnation. New influences, new styles, while still feeling like Codespeaker. Blending such diverse influences into a cohesive sound has been a challenge, but we're incredibly proud of the result. The album was recorded and mixed by Pedram Valiani of Frontierer at Outlier Sound, with drums recorded by Malcolm Abu. The album was then mastered by Brad Boatwright at Audio Siege.
We love you, Brad.
Brad, you're a man.
Don't you ever forget.
How can he?
We mention it all the time.
Every week.
Every single week.
So, Codespeaker. Codespeaker were a band that were already on my radar. I'd heard the 2022 self-titled debut album, so I had a kind of rough idea of what to expect. And you know, this is, as I've said, it's a band with a huge kind of dense weight to their sound. You know, crushingly heavy. It's dark. It's brooding. Ticks a lot of my boxes when it comes to post metal. And the debut was great. It showed a lot of, like a ton of potential, and it gained them like various support slots, including with our good friends in Armed for Apocalypse, when they played Bannerman's in Edinburgh, which we were at. Killer show. But what I think was kind of most intriguing about this one was the lineup had, you know, slightly changed since that last album in 2022.
You say slightly. 3 to 5 is more than half, Dave.
Yes. But also the debut that came out in 2022, they'd actually been writing that for 5 years prior to the album coming out. Right. So, like, I was expecting there would be some sort of kind of change or shift on this release. Scavenger is 9 tracks, runs about 51 minutes ish. And as I expected, does come with a few changes, a few upgrades since the debut. And yeah, as I said, the debut was a good album. I think it done a really good job of just kind of capturing the kind of raw heaviness of the band. Very self-assured for a debut. There were moments on it I felt where you could tell it was like a debut. You could tell it was a first album, where maybe some ideas maybe weren't fully kind of developed yet. And I'd say the same for the band themselves. I don't think the full kind of personality of Codespeaker was completely there yet. This album feels like a big step towards sounding like a band with more distinction than they did on the self-titled. And it's not like they've drastically changed the sound or anything like that. This is still a post-metal album at the end of the day. But I feel like they've challenged themselves a bit more on this to deliver an album that is more detailed, is more diverse, and I found it much more rewarding an album as well. I think post-metal albums can like often sit within a familiar or similar kind of feel for long periods, just kind of hammering away at you with the big kind of colossal sound. But I think Codespeaker have done really well on this release is not let these tracks get stuck in the same place for too long. And that variation on the album comes in kind of various forms. But I think one of the biggest and best kind of alterations for me is they've created more moments on this album where it shifts tempo and rhythm. And they were prone to switch rhythmically on the debut as well, but here it feels much more charged, more aggressive, I'd say, and it adds even more to the heaviness on this album in a big way. For me, even on the first listen, it felt more attention grabbing, and then on repeated listens, I felt like those sections that really grabbed me became more and more memorable with each kind of spin of the album. There's also more refinement in the ideas here as well compared to the previous album. They definitely don't get as like kind of drone heavy, I suppose, on this one. It's still very sludgy and post-metally, but the riffs I think have more kind of definition to them. It's not progressive per se, but they have a bit more. Some of them have a bit more kind of bend to them, and definitely more character to them as well. As do the drums on this as well, which was the other kind of big kind of standout on this album for me. There was much more. They were much more interesting to listen to on that front, and that's not to say that they weren't interesting before, but I felt like there was more variation in the playing here. The fills are more interesting. There's a lot of kind of cool like bass drum ideas, plus there's switch ups in the tempo as well. I think it's track 3, Rescission. It's like Meshuggah as fuck. Like it's got that kind of like off time kind of groove, very Meshuggah-esque. But then it slips into this like really discordant kind of slow kind of chug that's like absolutely heavy, and then to finish it off we get these like vocal layers that just kind of make the Codespeaker sound even bigger. Samsa as well, another track that's a bit kind of rhythmically different to what they've been doing before, much more up tempo, but again with a more of a kind of almost kind of like angular kind of rhythm. Tracks like Enzo, on the other hand, almost reaches more into a kind of blackened territory, both in the tempo and the tone, which is it's really bleak, which this album does kind of exude that for majority of the runtime anyway. But I think on that track you've also got the addition of Chad Kapper, who's the Frontier vocalist, and he's adding in that kind of higher register vocal, which it kind of added to the kind of misery of the track. But I thought his voice on this track worked really well with the lower, that more kind of gravelly, kind of more corrosive tone of Greg. Especially the end of the track where they're both kind of screaming at the same time. It just sounds really, really visceral. But when the album isn't like wallowing in all that kind of misery and heaviness and darkness, there are sections of this where the band do touch on something more melodic, which it can still be quite melancholic and dark as well. But I think the cleaner passages that they've added in on this album, tracks like Karst and Verte, makes all the difference here. You get that almost kind of like breathable moment on the album, which also when the heavy parts do come back in, they sound even more kind of overwhelming when they do. There's also some really smart kind of clean vocals in those moments, which add a bit more kind of richness and a bit more depth to the songs as well, which was maybe something that was missing a bit more from the last album. But I particularly like the cleans on the closing track. Here, what is it? Hiraith? I don't know how you pronounce that. Which the cleans on that had this kind of like deep kind of resonance to them. And when I was listening to it, it kind of put me in mind of a band, one of my favourite bands from years ago called Arctic Sleep, who are no longer on the go, but the tone and the kind of register reminded me of that band, which was really cool to hear. I've listened to this 4 or 5 times, and every time I hear it, I enjoy it a little bit more. I think this is a much more cleverly crafted release from Codespeaker, definitely more varied, more daring at times, and I'd say more memorable than the debut album. I think like touring with bands like 100 Year Old Man or or Am for Apocalypse, I think has made Codespeaker kind of up their game on this one. My only wee gripe.
Oh, there's a Davey gripe. Love a wee Davey gripe. He always leaves it right to, it's like Columbo. I know your wife's a fan of Columbo, but you always, there's just one more thing.
And my gripe is in part to do with the production. Now, what I would say is, for the most part, the production is great. Like, it's weighty, it's metallic, there's nuance in there, and the kind of lead work. The vocal layers are excellent. And although I think the drumming on this album is much better than the previous album from a kind of playing perspective, and, you know, more kind of interesting to listen to, some elements of the kit I felt could have been doing with a slight boost. The first thing was the snare. It kind of bothered me a little bit. The snare gets a little bit lost on occasion. When it's kind of slow and it's grooving, it's fine. But I notice when it picks up in speed and the snare starts to go more kind of attack-like, it kind of starts to kind of disappear a little bit. And that might be more a kind of compression issue where it's just not letting it kind of breathe enough. The bass drum as well. I think the bass drum is completely audible through the album. Absolutely, you'll hear it no problem. But I think it could have benefited from a little bit more kind of top end for me personally. But I felt like it was kind of fighting with some frequencies it kind of muddied it just a little bit. But that could just be the drummer and me being pedantic.
I was about to say, surprise, surprise, the drummer wants more drums on the album who's listening to. I mean, who could have thought it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a personal thing. Others may not have that issue at all. But
I don't have this issue.
No, nice. I didn't think you would. Just for me, there's a couple of things that could have been tweaked slightly better for me. But that aside, I think it sounds like Codespeaker are just getting better and better over time. And you can hear a clear jump from, you know, the debut to this. It has much more personality in it for sure. What about yourself? What did you think of Scavenger?
So I love these. I love our dynamic, Dave. Right, our dynamic is set up that you are studious, and you will go away and you will read press statements, and you will go and find previous albums, and you will come prepared. Right, and me, I shoot from the hip. I ain't reading fucking nothing. I was elected to lead, not to read, Dave. Right. I will listen to an album and I will make up my own goddamn opinions. They will not be throwing words like Cult of Luna out there, although this band seems a lot like Cult of Luna. It wasn't my thoughts. They'll be throwing things out there like Neurosis. Actually, Neurosis was also in my thoughts. Right? They can throw those things out there. Yeah. Occasionally, PR people are right. Other times are wrong, though. Right?
Yeah.
I'll also let you know that I don't check to see where the country of origin is for the band. So for me, they were not Scottish at all.
Oh.
Scandinavian. I had them like in the heart of a fjord. Like they were playing in like some fucking Chernobyl-esque, like hollowed out industrial building, which was a practice room. And then a lot of that might have been the album artwork, which you didn't mention, and how fucking dare you, because it's absolute. If ever there was an image that captured a sound.
Yeah.
Although there is a door with light in it, and there's no light in this album. A little bit. A wee bit. Yeah, so this sounds fucking monstrous. We mentioned, obviously, from the PR and whatnot, they mentioned Neurosis, of which there is a hint of the girth, so to speak, of a Neurosis. I get a lot of kind of like early kind of early 2010s Cult of Luna in their sound. It's to do with weight. There is no wasted space here, which is like really like post metal has a tendency, you mentioned before, to drone on. I think the conscious choice to keep songs for the most part under 6 minutes focuses it a little bit more. They also are accused, as you mentioned before, of being very monotone when it comes to their BPM. These guys don't have that. They're kind of more interested in switching things up, which I'm glad that from what you described they've carried over from the previous album. But it's the use of how they fill that space that's really interesting. Definitely slots them comfortably among some of the better post-metal I've heard. If you're going to go dank, if you're going to go heavy, if you're just going to sound, for lack of a better word, fucking ugly. I mean, this is thick and ugly, which is how I describe the look of my penis when I'm wearing fishnet tights. I mean, they're all pressed like Play-Doh and that. It's like thick and ugly, right?
That is an
That's
image. Wow.
It's an image that you will never get. You can wash your eyes right now with sulfuric acid, and I'll tell you right now, it's burned in the retina, right? But it's just like a very corrosively heavy, discordantly ugly sound, and there's so much of it. But the best traditions of the genre will let things feed out, and that's smart use of the space. If every single song was just crammed with this dense, compacted noise all the way through, you would have no way of determining what is heavy and what isn't. After about 2 songs, you'd be acclimated to the sound, and you'd be just kind of like, all right, that's what they do. They switch up with clean sections. Hetatome is a great example of that, of a track that starts off savagely aggressive and kind of slow groove thrash, but finds its way into clean guitars and kind of distant styled, almost reverby sort of vocals. And to me, like the fact that it came off the back of Recession, which you mentioned before, is Meshuggah as fuck. It comes off the back of that. To me, is just a band conscious that they want dynamics in their album to resonate and sit.
Yeah.
I don't get the issue that you get with the drums, but to be honest with you, I wasn't paying. Post-metal is never a genre where I concentrate on what the drummer's doing. Like, I'm usually focused on that riff is fucking huge and what the vocals are doing. And what I love about this is that, like, guitar-wise, there is a ton of fucking talent here.
Yeah.
Whether it sits within like your standard post-metal groove, but also moments where they switch things up and start incorporating a little bit of sludge. It's very precision sludge, but it's in there.
Yeah.
For sure. And it just adds, those two genres actually sit very close together anyway. But the fact that they lean into that, and those leads, like you mentioned Enzo earlier on, when things start going more kind of lead melodic in that, it Sims fucking chef's kiss. Sims fucking huge. Vocally, this is amazing. This guy was born to be in a post-metal band. If you sound like that, that's your genre, slot in. And it works really, really, really well. I think they've got a sound. I realised how many albums they had before, and on the second album, there's a swath of fucking confidence here.
Yeah.
That would make me think, like, given a little bit of time, given some more tours, I could see these guys starting to shift up into the higher echelons of kind of record labels, like that put this stuff out. I'm not saying that they're maybe necessarily at pelagic level yet, but
yeah,
no. Like all the more better for hearing that they're kind of homegrown talent. I thought this was really, 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 really good. Very much like yourself, it took me about 3 listens to kind of fully find my footing with it.
Yeah.
I do think it's maybe slightly overlong, but it's a post-metal album, and that's a gripe that I could throw at almost any post-metal album. I think it's a tad long, but it was never... It's a tad long by virtue of the amount of songs on it, not because I think any one song is too long or there's too many of them, if that makes sense. Even though I'm defeating my argument. I get to the end and I'm like, that was a long listen. But whilst I'm listening to it, I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
So it's more when we get to the end of it. So yeah, Codespeaker, you are very much on my radar now. Hopefully we'll get, if they're local, hopefully we'll get to see them again sometime soon. And congratulations on this fucking spanking second album.
Yeah. Last thing, scores for Scavenger. I think this is a step up from the previous album. I think it is far more kind of varied, and as I said, more memorable than that album. I think the clean vocals work really well on this. I wouldn't be against them adding more of that, but maybe it works so well because they haven't overdone it on this album. I don't know, but they're really good. I'd like to hear more, maybe. I don't know. As I said, not many gripes, a little bit in the production for me on the drum side of things, but I'm just being pernickety about that. I am going to go 4 out of 5 on this one. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
I'm right beside you.
Nice.
It's an easy 4. I think these guys sound great, and yeah, we've not listened to a huge amount of post-metal this year.
Yeah.
Especially of this ilk. or kind of post metal, that it kind of felt refreshing. It felt new to me because we've been listening to so much other stuff.
Yeah.
And I get that there's an itch that always needs scratch for me where I need just a good solid slab of something fucking rank. And I'm using words that Codespeaker will hopefully understand. So yeah, congratulations on your massive rank album. 4 rank stars out of 5.
Nice. So that drops on November 8th on Ripcord Records. I'll put links below to the band, to the pre-order on Bandcamp, and a single so you can check out, have a listen, see what you think. That is the review. Thanks for checking out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye everyone.